We have public comment today. This is sort of a special meeting, mostly for us to get information. So I don't know if we can go ahead and turn off the chat since we're not actually going to have public comment. So welcome. The purpose of this meeting is to get an update on reopening plans. And then at the end, we'll go into executive session just to look at a document that we've received for the adjustments to our contract for the year. This is a remote meeting. The members participating remote are Michelle Bailey, Anna Cizik, Michelle Horrigan, Dana Alara, and Pete Walczyk, who I believe just needs to be promoted out of the participants. Or at least that's what he's saying.
All right, let's take a look.
But I don't see him there. Also participating remotely today are Superintendent Banyos and Assistant Superintendent Leone. This meeting is recorded. Trying to think if there's anything else we need to say. I think we've covered
all
everything.
Disclaimers, right?
Yeah, so first, a few guidelines for today. We know that we've received a lot of comments from the public, and we also know that this is a very emotional and stressful decision that we'll be making over the course of the next week. So I'm going to ask that we kind of try to ask questions, and then if you have an opinion about something, it's fine to state your opinion. If you disagree with someone, it's absolutely fine when it's your turn to say, you know, I disagree with Michelle because, but I don't want it to be like Michelle Bailey says, Anna says, Michelle Bailey says, Anna says, back and forth, because we're not really here to debate each other. We're here to deliberate. Let's see, is there anything else? Yeah, so that's the organization, just to kind of keep it going. All right, so I guess we're gonna pause for a minute while we try and get Peter on. So I'm just going to email him my link and see if that works.
And Janelle's reaching out to him directly, Michelle, to try to get him.
All right, so I don't wanna not let him out. And now David Polito is also here participating remotely.
Gonna shut my door.
So Peter, it does say he's here, but I don't see him.
Yeah, I looked as well and I didn't see him before, but let me check again.
Yeah, I just don't see him at all. Oh, he's at the top with his hand raised. That's why he's not alphabetical. Great, we found him.
There we go, let you do it.
Okay, you should be here, Peter. You can unmute and just confirm that you can hear us.
Now I can. I don't know why I keep receiving links that are invalid or.
Yeah, so hi, welcome. Peter Walczyk is also participating remotely today. And I just want to just quick review, like today it's for information for the school committee so that we can like read the plan and whatever over the weekend. But we can ask our questions now that are basic, because I realize not one person on this committee has had the opportunity to even see the document. It is now linked to our agenda. So when Ms. Superintendent Banyos puts that up, it's also available on our agenda. But when we're speaking today, and just in general, we're going to try and debate the issues or deliberate the issues and not the people. And in order to do that, you know, if you disagree with someone, that is completely fine, but save that until it's your time to speak. And then you can say, you know, on a point that you made, Michelle, I disagree. But we're not going to do the Michelle says, you know, the other Michelle says, the Michelle says, the other Michelle says. We're not going to debate back and forth, just because we're not
Michelle,
here to debate each other. We're here
Michelle,
to deliberate the issues. Yes.
I just want to call the meeting to order.
Yeah, we did before you got here.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're good to go. All right, so we're ready. Are you going to put that on your screen?
The plan? Yes, so I'm going to start sharing my screen now, and then we can take a quick walk through and then have an opportunity for the committee to ask any questions that they might have. I did want to let you know that a large portion of our administrative team is also in the panelist section, so that if we need to pull anybody up to answer specific questions, we'll be able to do that. All right, so as we've been trying to work on content and get something formatted in a way that is professional for our district, we just uploaded it because we just feel like we have something that is at a level that we can put out. You will notice all across this there are draft watermarks because this is obviously still in draft form, but I think it'll be a helpful way to help you walk through where we are, what we're thinking. So first piece, we're kind of framing this around the idea of general excellence, given Hamilton Wenham's connection to General Patton and the many references in the district. And what we are looking at here before we actually get into the plan is to be sure that everybody is aware of the level of processing that has occurred related to this plan. If you look here, there's a list of superintendent office hours. Our high school administration met with over 25 students to talk about their feelings about coming back, what was important to them. We have met with the Hamilton Wenham Boards of Health and the school district administration. There on July 22nd, there was a superintendent's chat. On July 21st, there was a chat with faculty and staff. We have conducted a July parent survey, a July teacher survey, an August parent survey. We had a week-long teacher design team with 30+ people in attendance. We had targeted chats with the community this week. Those recordings are being posted to the website. We had chats with faculty and staff by level this week. We held focus group sessions, and we have a district leadership team group in today and tomorrow as well, vetting, giving input into the plan. So I do want to let you know that probably collectively we're pushing up against 80 people that have personally touched this plan and have feedback from many, many community members, parents. Our last parent survey pushed up against 1,500 responses. One of the things that you know and will be voted on today is that we changed the school calendar from 180 days to 170 days per the commissioner's direction. And we think this is a really helpful piece. You'll notice that teachers are starting on the 25th, and there's a significant amount of time for planning and preparation, so that when we open, and we need to be prepared for all 3 different models, in addition to two other models that we'll talk about. So having this time up front to be able to work with teachers is really critical. A reminder that the impact of this is that our last day of school will be Tuesday, June 15th. We are able to state that definitively, unlike other years when we're working with snow days, but any weather-related or school cancellation events for building issues or something like that would shift to school to remote, so we can actually give families the definitive last day of school. So one of the things that we've talked about, but I think it's important to keep reviewing with the committee and the community, is that there are 3 different parts of the plan that we are required to submit to the state. We are required to submit a virtual or remote plan, a blended or hybrid plan, and a totally in-person plan. This is all part of the same overarching umbrella of our district-wide plan. It needs these three components within it. And with the idea being that when you have these three components, they are informed around what the current conditions are related to COVID. So what you see in the first part is if and when we were to have conditions that would allow for all students to come back and be in person, what are some of the things that we would be doing to continue to be mindful of health and safety? And those are things that you can read through. You have specific information related to what would happen at elementary, middle, and high school. So that information is there, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I think currently this is probably the least likely mode we would get into, at least in the foreseeable future. But I want to let you know that we have thought about that, and we have identified a plan for what would happen if and when it is appropriate for us to move all students back into school. The next portion of the plan is that hybrid learning model. And so this is the part of the plan that says, do conditions suggest that you can bring students in a modified way? So our plan that we have developed is to bring students in under a cohort model, so that on Mondays and Tuesdays, we would have cohort A in the building, and we would have cohort B working from home in a remote environment. On Wednesday, both A and B are working in a remote environment where our teachers are engaged in professional development, in planning, and contact with families and students. And then on Thursday, it switches, and the group that was in person is now remote, and the group that was remote is now in person. And we looked at a number of different models. We played out the pros and cons, and this was where we landed in terms of a hybrid model. The goal would be to have about 50% of the students back in the building, while the other 50% would be working from home. Okay, some of the kind of key points about why we thought this was particularly a stronger model is that we have one cohort in for 2 days. Then we have that breathing room for 1 day, helps to dissipate germs. We can do a little bit more deep cleaning. And then we bring the other group in for 2 days. And then there's another 2-day break before the next cohort returns. We looked at a model that we believed was viable across all grade levels. There were some places where it'd say this might be better for this grade level versus that grade level, but we were looking for a consistent model across the school district that allowed families to keep their siblings together. And that COVID trajectory suggests that we need to move from remote. The shift here is fairly easy, where we'd be just looking at moving 2 days of instruction over to a remote. We would already have three full days of remote practice and learning already in place. Couple of key things to be mindful of is that the hybrid model goes above and beyond the recommended safety standards that have been published by DESE, and has the more rigorous standard of 6 feet social distancing. And this allows for, again, fewer students in the building and about 10 to 12 students per classroom that can be spread out in a manageable way that creates an environment that we believe is viable in terms of learning. We know that of the 3 models, the hybrid model has been, or the hybrid or returning to some in-person learning has been the preference for the vast majority of families. And again, noting that when we surveyed families in the first week of August this week, we asked the question, how do you intend to send your child back to school? And this is not a non-binding survey, but it gives us a sense of what we'll be looking at and what preferences are for families. 88% of the families that responded to the either or question of whether you would be in the hybrid model or choosing a fully remote model, 88%, so that they would be interested in or intending to send their students under hybrid, and 12% intending to send under the fully remote option. In an earlier survey conducted in July, 78% of the parents that answered that survey, we had about high 700s, close to 800 families responding, indicated that returning to full-time in-person or hybrid learning was their first choice, with the vast majority of people actually preferring the in-person model. The hybrid model falls in the middle when it comes to health and safety. It meets the educational needs of students and is manageable in cost. And one of the new pieces of information I have for the committee, one challenge that many districts are running into is related to transportation, given that our buses can only be running at about a third capacity. This survey that we conducted indicated that only about 28% of our families would be looking for bus transportation. In a hybrid model, that means that we would be transporting about 14% of our families. Again, it's not binding, but it gives us information that suggests that busing is not going to be a problem here in Hamilton-Wenham. We know that on the downside, the hybrid model does present some complex challenges for staff and families in terms of kind of managing family life and looking at how we might manage teacher absences and leaves. What you have here is a description of the overarching kind of design principles at the elementary level. And you can see just some graphics around that, what we're planning for some of our special populations. Then you see the middle school model. And I'm flipping through these quickly because if you'd like more detail, what I would want to do is pull up the administrators in these buildings and ask you to have any specific questions that you might have. I will share with you one of the lots of innovative thinking at the elementary level in terms of using a pod structure. At the middle school level, there's a lot of excitement about a crew model where we would have one educator attached to 10 to 11 students that they would be meeting with daily. And that's that personal connection that the teacher would have to a small group of students, and they would be a crew that have a lot of connections, and it focuses on social, emotional, and relationship building. Again, you see detailed plans for the different programs that we have at the middle level. And then at the high school level, what is looking at here is to have classes operate at a more of a block scheduling. So students would have their classes for about 90 minutes a day. And the courses on their course load would occur over 2 days. Again, lots of other details, but just in terms of a general overview. Again, Eric is here if any details you want to pull out at this time. Next, you'll see all the plans for our special populations at the high school under a hybrid.
I just got, wait, excuse me. This is unacceptable, right? There's way too much information here. Way too much information here for us to have. And you're saying that, I understand that you're here and Eric's here and everyone else is here to answer questions, but I can't even see what the schedule looks like. You're scrolling through so fast, right? I was really, under the impression that we're going to have this to at least look at yesterday. I understand how much work is going into this, but to actually sit here and, be asked to, create intelligent, informative questions for us in our community, at this time is it's unreasonable to even think that.
I agree.
So why don't, if this feels like this was our earliest ability, we were finishing the draft document this morning. You saw the level of people and the amount of work that's gone in the past 2
So
weeks.
I am not, I just want to be
wanna-
perfectly clear that I am not doubting the amount of work and time that went into this. That's not what I'm saying at all. But we need time to process it
Mhm.
so we can then go out and actually, then communicate to people in the community what this plan actually is. And, I know I'm about to go out in an hour and a half and run into, a couple dozen parents from the community. And I am not going to be able to answer a single question based off of this.
So David, let's let her go all the way through and then we can talk about like what the next process is for next week, because we might not be ready to ask our questions now. We may need time to read this. Maybe we can ask our questions Monday, and then maybe we have another meeting next week, unfortunately. But let's,
Yeah.
because I'm with you, David. Like, I have lots of questions. I have lots of them. I'm writing them down here, but I haven't even had a chance to see a word on the page yet. Like, I can see preschool now.
And basically, I understand that, one of the things that we did make the shift from, we had the meeting planned for Monday for the committee to look at this plan and vote it. And, in looking at that seemed like an unreasonable timeline. So we're trying to get it to you earlier. So what I'm trying to do is just frame for you what is in this plan, and know what kinds of questions you want to have answered. And again, if we need to have another meeting in between to do that, we can. One of the things that came across my screen before I left the high school to come to the office for this meeting was an email indicating that the commissioner has extended to the 14th when these plans need to be accepted. That was probably as of 2:30 this afternoon. I sent that to you, Michelle. So clearly we are not the only district up against it. And so if we need to extend out and have more formal presentations that unpack this more slowly, we now have received.
What's the penalty if we don't make the 14th deadline?
Well, not making the 14th deadline, it has the state level, it would be a conversation with the commissioner and asking for an extension. The larger penalty is that if we are going to be prepared to start school and to have staffing in place, we need a plan so that we can move forward to start to implement it. Particularly, David, I would call your attention to contractual language that staff need to have had their assignment by August 15th. And if we don't have a plan, then we can't give people assignments. So there is external pressure related to when the plan needs to be given to the state, and there is internal pressure in order for us to have the information that we need to be appropriately staffed for the fall.
I mean,
Or we need to bargain it.
we're already in the middle of that.
Can I suggest that we let Mary Beth finish
Yeah.
and then we can come back to this? I think that was a valid point before we sort of tear it apart right now.
I agree.
So what we have here, and what you're seeing here is under the hybrid model, just to frame the document for you. You see again the special populations. So we are, along with having all three different models, then within each model, we need to have plans for how we would work with the different populations that are in our district. So you have those pieces there. And again, I know that you're not reading this now. I'm just framing for you what you have available to review. Same thing again, this is now the remote model. You'll see under each of the three plans, you will have an elementary detail, a middle level detail, and a high school detail, along with all the special populations that fall within these categories. So you see all those plans. And then what we have here, along with the district plan to shift its students from one situation to the next, as the COVID trajectories change, we also know that what we need is a full remote plans, and that's going to be different than the remote learning plan that you see here. So this is the remote plan that has to do with all the students in the district that could pivot, right? So are we in the hybrid model? Are we in the in-person model? Are we in the remote model? So what you see in this section of the plan is what happens with the general population should they shift to fully remote. Okay. And there's information about technology, again, what would happen differently at the elementary level, the middle level, the high school level. Then what we know, and one of the things I did want that I will point out here is that at the high school level, because the direct instruction by course in person is only 90 minutes for that teacher when that students are working. If we have students that are needing the fully remote model, that means it's not going to change over the course of the year. We can accommodate them into the high school programming because of the way the high school is structured. So for the group that needs all remote for an extended period of time, that cannot or does not want to shift in and out, they're opting out of the main district program, then again, we can accommodate that within the high school level. What we need to do in terms of the K through 2 level is what we are calling the K through 8 HW Virtual Academy. So in this academy, we have students that would be enrolled in the online learning management system that has been vetted at the state level. Yesterday, there was an email sent out giving us information as to what those are. We will be putting a team on that to unpack that and look at that and make decisions about what would make the most sense here. We would assign a building principal who would have as part of their duties to be the administrator of the virtual academy. We would have both an elementary and a middle level teacher assigned to the virtual academy to support students and families in this model. And then the students in the virtual academy would be also connected to their home schools. Some of the ways in which that would happen are the students would also have not only being part of this academy, but also being connected to a homeroom in their brick and mortar school. They would be connected to a crew team at the middle level. They would be connected to an advisory at the high school level. We are looking for the different ways that students in this particular mode would be invited to school community and building events and would be integrated into special subjects and club activities. And again, you see detail related to elementary, middle school. And again, the high school is not there because the high school can be accommodated in the regular model for the most part. Should a high school student want to be part of the virtual academy, that is something that would be available. Then what you see and has been asked to be provided in this plan are what are all the social student supports and social emotional learning. That's something we're paying very, very close attention to. You should know that we've had over 80 staff members participate in trauma sensitivity training this summer to prepare them, both in terms of our students and knowing that they're going to come in after having some really difficult experiences, and also how do we work together as a staff and with families as a culture. We've been experiencing a level of trauma here, and how do we help everybody work their way through it. And we have some action steps related to that. And then these are things that are asked to be commented on in the plan. So what are we looking at in terms of planning and instruction? Again, I want to remind the committee that right now we will have 12 full days before students return, where teachers are going to be able to be working, planning, being trained in different opportunities, doing a lot of coordination, looking at curriculum. And we will also have that Wednesday day where this type of work will be available. One of the things that we will be continuing to unpack, including those first 12 days, is looking at how are we going to assess our students when they come back in so that we know where we need to intervene. And then what will the intervention, what will the existing intervention measures be that we had, and then what will the new interventions be that may need to be provided. And then there's a request in the plan to be submitted to the state around a certification that our plans meet the final health and safety regulations, which they do. And then what you see in this part of the plan is detail related to safety facilities, transportation, and operational protocols. So you can get a sense of what the school would be looking like. You can look at personal protective equipment, how we're handling hygiene, cleaning and disinfecting, what we're doing in terms of ventilation and HVAC. As you know, we have undergone a study. We'll be linking the reports here and what we're doing in response to those reports here, where we are with water. There's information on a heat index. We're mindful of the fact that some of our classrooms can get very, very hot in the 90 degrees on with masks. You know, how might we handle that? You'll see detail around that. You will see ideas about transportation. Again, the graphic that shows how we would have to set up buses. And then our nurses are hard at work in providing a lot of protocols for how things will operate from the nursing perspective. And those should be able to be linked in the next day or so. So that is where we are. I hope that one of the things that you take away from this is the enormity of the task and the planning that has been required. We have the level of detail now that the state is requesting. There are still more documents to follow. We know that it's going to be really helpful for FAQ documents. So as we've been engaged in the chats, as we have been listening to the community, we have a series of questions that we are in the process of listing out. So you can expect to see those. So at this moment in time, this is what we need to provide and vote on as a district to provide information to the Department of Education and to give our community initial feedback around where our plan is headed. So I know, again, that this is a dense document, and I suspect that even in a slideshow presentation, there's just too much information here to go through in a PowerPoint slide. But the document is here for you to look and review. I'd be happy to answer any large picture questions that you might have. And will be available if you have more detailed questions as we move forward. And at this point, I'll stop and see where you'd like to go next, Michelle.
It's beneficial. Well, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we need the plan up. Maybe we don't. We'll see. Okay. So
I would like to have her stop sharing just so we could hear each other and see each other better.
Let me do that.
Unless there's anybody who's having difficulty actually seeing this document at their house. Okay. So we need to be done by 5. There is a ton of just questions generally. So I think let's have people can ask maybe a couple of questions and we'll see where it goes from there. How about that? Okay. And then after you've asked a couple of questions, then we'll move on to another person. And then maybe we'll get back to you to ask more questions. Maybe more questions will be asked at another meeting. It's hard to say. We'll see how it goes. So David, you get to go first because I saw your hand first, and then I saw Peter's hand second. So just be aware that David's going to go, then Peter. Once Peter goes, we'll figure out who's next.
So, I really don't think I'm going to vote in favor of this. I'm telling you right now. This is an operational plan, right? Which I understand there's a lot of logistics that need to go into the operational plan of this. What this is completely ignoring is the overall Hamilton Wenham education system. The fact that you're actually saying that the fully online students will be opting out of the school system is ridiculous, right? The fact that you're saying if we go full remote, which we know we're going full remote, they're going to be still be separated is ridiculous. I cannot. I don't even need to see what's in the weeds here. I don't like the 30,000-foot view at all. My inbox is full of people nervous about just that fact. And we missed the boat completely.
So if I could respond to that, David. So first of all, what you see in this plan is what we are required to produce for the Department of Education. So this plan had a set of criteria that needed to be unpacked, and we needed to provide information to the Department of Education. They asked us to build out a plan for the general population that would move back and forth. They asked us for a separate plan for students that would need a full year remote option. And they asked us to provide details for students that are vulnerable populations. This plan does that. I can tell you what I think I'm hearing you say is that you have concerns that the plan does not allow for all students to be taught by Hamilton Wenham teachers. That it's an operational and a financial issue that we've unpacked. Again, I'm going to review that we had about 60 educators working to see if we could figure out how to do this with existing resources.
So the problem is.
Wait. We're not going to say it. Let her finish.
But I just want to, because I want to say.
Let her finish, and then you'll have your chance. Trust me,
Okay.
You still have 4 minutes. You have 4 minutes and 26 seconds.
So here's something I need people to think about, right? Is that the staffing, the models for moving kids back and forth and a model for maintaining are two different models. And we currently are unable to figure out how we would provide Hamilton Wenham teachers for the smaller group of cohort that is spread across 13 different levels, and also provide in-person instruction for our other students. So this is not something that was overlooked. This was not something that we didn't go back numerous times to try to figure out. And in one of those attempts, we were able to figure out how to get the high school over. But we are sitting with some realities, and the people that have been working together to try to figure this out have deep knowledge of what's available, what schedules look like, what staffing looks like, what finances look like. And given that, this is what we believe makes sense. And we have been listening and hearing people that are concerned about that. We have built in lots of opportunities. How can we respond to that if we can't put an individual teacher in? That's a question that we tried to figure out. All right, if we can't provide an individual grade level teacher for everybody that is in the remote program, what are we able to do? We are able to assign an elementary educator. We're able to assign a middle school educator. We're able to assign an administrator. We're able to have connections for students. We are able to sit down, unpack what these programs look like, and understand where there may be in alignment or out of alignment with our programs, what way we do about that. So what I would share with you is that this is a remarkably detailed problem that has a lot of complexities, and the people that have the deepest knowledge base about all the puzzle pieces really worked hard to try to figure out how to best do this, and this is their best thinking where we are right now.
All right, David, go.
So I was the only thing I want to say is I see this plan as siloed thinking and not pivots.
So David, could you say a little bit more about that?
Sure. I mean, I think that looking at this problem, right, and I said this back from the beginning, like really sort of wasting your time thinking about what it's going to look like going back to school full time, like it was March 12th last year, is a waste of time. It maybe June
David,
we'll get that, right? But I understand. Let me finish. But the way I think we need to, you know what I mean, you need to look at this is that is a almost 100% chance that we're going to be going all remote at some point. So you make that plan, then you pivot what a hybrid model looks like for when it is safe to get people back and forth. And then you have the other pivot of what it looks like from a fully online model to if we can get everyone back at school back in June, which would be the easiest of all the pivots, right? Most likely because then we're falling back on what we know, you know, what we've done so well for the past 60 years. So, you know, this way, by saying, well, we're planning for this hybrid model, and then this on fully online model is opting out of the hybrid model, and it's going to be running as just that, you're siloing them, right? You're taking them right out of what, you know, is everything that is Hamilton education, and you're putting them in their own silo to run parallel with us, hopefully. You know, it's not a pivot, right? A pivot would be then, hey, if we go all remote, then we can move them back in. That's a pivot. So.
And the reason that we can't do that is that it has to do with staffing, right? Because there is a specific staffing model that can pivot, and a different staffing model that can't, right? And so it would happen in a remote, if we try to merge these two for a period of time. So let's say that there is an uptick in COVID trajectories. And right now, you know, I was speaking to our lead nurse this morning. Our cases are really low, right? They are pretty low in this town right now, and not a lot of concern right now. From that is the latest medical piece that I have. We have been consulting with the Board of Health around this particular piece. But if we pivot for a period, you know, what I would think, and I think most people are thinking in this line of thinking, that we're most likely to see an uptick later in the school year for a period of time. And so you start the kids in with one group of teachers. If you then pull other teachers in, you have to reconfigure how things are being structured. In assignments for students, curriculum for students, and that creates a remarkably disruptive experience for everybody, for our students, for our teachers. You know, if you wanted, you know, I can tell you that you could say to the state, we're going to stay fully remote for the year. There are some big ramifications around that, and you should be aware of what those are. But trying to have one group pivot in, pivot out, change teacher assignments when the COVID virus fluctuates, that's problematic.
So Mary Beth, I think what you're hearing from David, and we'll see if this is a theme or not, is that we need to see that staffing model. Because we don't understand why it doesn't work. You know what I'm saying?
One of the things that I shared with the committee, or not with the committee, with the remote chat group the other day, just a quick one. We have hundreds of staff, right? So to build out a staffing model, that is next week's work that we are looking to do. But you know, but the back of the envelope calculations, this is a helpful piece to know, is that if you look at second grade, if you look at Bucher and Winthrop and Cutler, there is approximately 40 kids in each second grade section. There are 2 teachers assigned to second grade in each of the schools. And so when you split that out, you have 2 teachers that have a class of 20. In a hybrid model, 10 come in 2 days and 10 come in the other day. Those teachers are using their time instructing in person, right? And so to then say, and now you have to run a 5-day remote program, that is not something that has been viable and doable for folks. And again, if in what we have seen in the data, is that people want to be back in school. The majority of the community wants to be back in school at some level. So we are trying to design a model that enables that to happen. With the existing resources that we have, I will remind you that 22 positions were eliminated from the budget in June. And with our current staffing, that is what we are sitting with. And so you may not agree with it, you may not like it, you can give us additional charges, but I need you to understand that that's what we are running up against when we're trying to do all different types of models with the same staffing that was cut by 22 people that was designed to run one model.
So what you're saying is the hybrid model assumes level staffing.
Yes, the hybrid model would assume level staffing. Yes.
David, I'll save your minute and a half if you want. Okay, Peter, go right ahead.
Hi, everyone. I think we can agree on one thing. The kids that are going to be in school, they're going to be there 6 feet apart. They're going to be masked for several hours. They will not be socializing. There will be no AC. It'll be hot and miserable. It'll still be screen time all day because we're not going to be doing handouts. They're going to be locked in the same room all day, right? And
actually not, Peter, just so you know that wouldn't be the plan in terms of people have been thinking very, very deeply about how we have this be meaningful, engaging, active things happening. So I do want to let you know that nobody is envisioning a situation where kids are in their desks and never moving and the teacher is just lecturing the whole time. They are working really creatively and thinking about what are instructional models that could happen. Kids will be in mass for sure. And the desks themselves will be separated. But an example I would give you is that we've been working collectively for 2 weeks, and people are moving about, having conversations, maintaining social distance, being outside, being able to work together in groups. So I did want to just clarify that would not be the vision for the program.
Okay, and what I was saying was also, so I don't see how they can do group work if they have to maintain physical separation of 6 feet. I don't know what that would look like as having meaningful discussions or collaborative activities. And I just foresee anxiety-filled students and teachers. I just want to make that point. I guess one of my other frustrations was, and there's nothing we can do, we can't go in the past. 2 years ago, I approached Dr. Harvey with the idea of investing in our own learning management system, and he blew me off. And what I guess is if we're talking about going back in a hybrid system where the teacher is going to have to do some remote learning, some in-person learning, the parents who, the kids who are electing to do fully remote, they're going to be in the state system. Aren't we asking our teachers to do what we did in the spring? They're going to have to come up with their own learning management system all over again, or their own way of teaching remotely. Shouldn't we be helping our teachers and students by investing in our own learning management system that can be used in person, hybrid, or remote? And I think we should be using these next 5 weeks to get support our teachers and our students by investing in a learning management system that is ours, run by our teachers, linked to our curriculum, our qualified publishers. I just think we're putting a burden on our teachers again. We're separating our students into different silos, as I like the way David put that. I think we should be investing in a system that is ours, that is run by our teachers, containing our students, our content, our publishers, our curriculum, and that in a system that is interactive, adaptable, with algorithms that will direct a student towards their own unique combination of multiple intelligences and learning styles. The algorithms that I've seen working, they direct the individual students towards their best learning model. And I'd like to see us invested in that now for the next 5 weeks, helping our teachers and students get ready for that, rather than playing let's do this, knowing we are going to end up in remote anyway.
All right. Is there a question or?
I guess are we asking our teachers to do in this fall what we asked them to do in the spring, create their own online remote learning programs?
Yes, so Peter, we're using the Google Classroom platform, and people are designing experiences that can happen remotely. So yes, we are doing that. I think the major difference that we see between last spring, when basically people were walking out the door and said, don't come back, we're closed down, is that there has now been an opportunity to learn from what occurred last spring, to bring people back in terms of training. We, along with the trauma training that I mentioned, a large group of teachers have also been engaged in remote and digital learning. And then we have those 12 days of time to really get people together to be thoughtful, and the Wednesday time to be able to continue design and refining as the public education sector gets smarter about how to deliver remote instruction.
So I guess, is there a reason we can't invest in our own learning management system?
At this point, we are using Google Classroom. People are feeling, if I could.
Far from a learning management system.
Let her finish.
I'm sorry. Yep. Anyway.
So
Okay.
Google Classroom is a widely used learning management system. As we discussed, Peter, I know that there are others that are more robust than Google Classroom, but it is a learning management system that many people use, has the components that would be necessary to run a remote program. And we do not at this point want to introduce new platforms to families. We're actually tightening up the platform so that all families will be on the same system. We had a situation, we got some feedback from the spring that having Seesaw and some other ones at different levels was confusing for families. So given all the changes that are occurring, our focus right now is to maintain the platforms that we have that people are familiar with. And at some point down the road, looking at a more robust learning management system may be something that would be wise for this district. But in this moment of crisis and change, this does not appear to be the time to do that.
Yeah, I just know Google Classroom. I've been using it for 5 years, but it's not a real learning management system. It's just a way to organize, disseminate, receive, assign projects. It is not intuitive. It's not adaptive. It's not experiential. It doesn't have algorithms to direct a student towards, their own learning style. If they're struggling on a question in a formative assessment, a real learning management system will send them to another, pop up a window and say, here, watch this, knowing that based on your learning style, review this, then we can move forward once you've mastered this. Google Classroom doesn't do that. We're just asking the teachers to do a lot more work, I feel. Thank you.
Anna.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Super. Thanks, everybody. I have some statements and I do have a couple actual questions. So I'll start with statements first. I think, and I want you to hear this, Mary Beth, because I mean it genuinely. I appreciate all the work that you and all the teachers have put into this. I don't think anyone is questioning the work. It's been monumental. I used the expression recently that you were trying to move a mountain with a teaspoon, and I think everyone sees that. However, I, at present, cannot sanction or conscience this plan for several reasons. I think in your efforts to conform with the DESE request, you somewhat missed the forest from the trees. And I don't blame you for that because DESE's telling you to do this. And you've responded. You did what DESE said. The output of that, though, in our district at this time, with our resources and our staffing, and I've actually come to a point of acceptance. I believe you that we can't staff it because our district has some staffing deficiencies that are a derivative from underfunding and layoffs that were forced to be made. I believe you actually that it seems really impossible to do a hybrid model with efficacy in our district. And at the same time, provide a robust remote option. So what you've ended up producing is a plan that in my opinion is both grossly inequitable and discriminatory and siloing and othering to our remote learners. I also think it's inhumane to our students and our teachers to expect to go back to a classroom, as Peter described it, and we've already seen footage and videos and reports of what school looks like. I know that people are desperate to go back, but we have to be realistic. The fact that you introduced the concept of the heat index in the buildings and the fans and all that, I mean, we are asking our district to fundamentally choose one health problem for another. And another issue that I've heard no one talk about has to do with safety and security, that we have done all this work about ALICE training and active shooters and keeping our kids safe. It was part of a capital budget. And now we're talking about opening every door and every window and herding our kids outside in tents to mitigate heat index. Honestly, I do not think that our district can feasibly do hybrid and remote with any sense of equity. And I also don't think that we should. I think the idea that we're trying to start from a place that puts equity and humanity, not to mention greater public health at risk when we don't have to. This thought occurred to me this morning, and it's a great expression. I'd sort of forgotten about it. I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze right now. I just think we're working so hard to do something because DESE tells us to, and we've missed the high level purpose, which is we are two towns, we are one community, and we are one district. And you're dividing people, you're dividing parents, and I can't conscience it. Like, I won't vote for something that doesn't treat every student as equally valid. I have a real issue with your survey data. I don't understand where we've gone from 25% remote to 12% remote, given the feedback. Thank you, Michelle. I love a timer. So I'd like you, when I'm done, I'd like you to answer what happened to the other component of the data, because I have a real question with how you're skewing the data set from one to the other. And the real question, which I think a lot of people have heard about, is where are our teachers on this? We do not have a district without teachers that are willing to execute the plan. And I put a lot of stock in the people that have to do the work. I have heard, and we have seen multiple letters from different teachers' unions that they are supportive of a full remote restart and addressing a hybrid plan later as conditions warrant. That means a lot to me. And if we show up on September 14th with all these teachers saying, yeah, if the teachers won't do it, we don't have a plan. And then you're forced back to full remote anyway. I would much rather see us do something really well that's equitable for every single student in this district. And when we can evaluate bringing kids back, we buy ourselves a little bit more time to come up with a more thoughtful, nimble, flexible plan that treats every student as equally important. And frankly, maybe the survey data doesn't matter. I don't care if it's 10% or 50% or 20%. Every student in this district is equally important. And I refuse to sanction a plan that, in your own words, opts students out of our main district program. Those are your words. And the fact that you're able to say those, to me, reveals how you think of that population. That's really frustrating to hear. The other thing that's frustrating to hear is the staffing challenges. You use the expression, it's a back of envelope staffing, but we know we can't do it. Staffing's for next week. I mean, this is now. I don't understand where we've come to this point. And I'm frustrated that we're here, and I think we chose the wrong path. I firmly think we have to start remote and reevaluate our hybrid options later. And I would like you to address some of the data questions and the integration questions. And I have an absolute concern about safety. I don't want to be doomsday, but we're in a period of tremendous social unrest. Statistically, there has been a school shooting for months because kids haven't been in school. And I just think we have to be realistic about the risks and the trade-offs of what we're doing. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. Anna, I will respond to a couple of questions, but I'm gonna, before I do that, make an observation and a request that one of our key messages was around assuming positive intent. And while I can be that certainly appreciate that you may not agree with what the plan is that has been put into place, when I hear words that I am doing things that are inhumane, that I'm skewing data, that I'm not, I mean, those are terminologies that you're using. And again, you may not agree, but I would ask you to assume positive intent, because I can tell you that there is nothing more true than trying to take care of our students and our staff and our community. And that I find that upsetting. So I'm going to start my comments with that. In terms of the questions related to, I'm not quite sure which questions to answer at this point. I appreciate that you think that it is the wrong path. And that is something that can be considered. If the committee wants to say, then we want to be totally remote, here are some of the implications for that. I think if you want to be totally remote, then you most likely will have to do that for the year, because we are not going to be able to pivot back and forth. We won't have the structures in place to be able to do something that, and the staffing set up in such a way to pivot back and forth. So a decision to go fully remote is a decision most likely made for the year. That when I think about students, I think about all students. And I also know that there is a large percentage of our families and our students that desperately want to be back in school and have structure, and I care about them too. And I care about the families that I know from medical situations and from stress situations really want and need to be in their homes. And so if we're looking at a fully remote model, does that actually honor all community members? Because that takes away what many of our community members are saying that they want for their children. And that's what makes this problem so complex and so difficult. I will also share with you that in the commissioner conversations, he has indicated that if districts are going remote, if sports start up, districts that are remote will not be able to participate. That in the reasoning behind that is that if it's not safe enough in the community for students to be in school, they shouldn't be participating in sports. I also need you to understand that what he is indicating is that it is likely that federal dollars are coming, and that it is likely they will not come to districts that are fully remote and not trying to bring students back into school. And at the beginning of the week, he indicated that 90% of the communities in Massachusetts are are planning for a hybrid start, and a few and within that, about 5% are actually moving to a full in-person model. I understand all the issues. This is remarkably complex, and it's not just in Hamilton. We are operating in a larger system, and I understand, and I have been so appreciative of the teachers and the union representation in Hamilton and Wenham. I could not ask for better partners. And we are working together to see if we can figure out a way that we can create conditions in which most of our teachers are feeling comfortable. We know we have some teachers that will not, or have conditions that won't allow for that. And we're thinking about how we take care of them. So I appreciate, and I don't know if there's specifics, Anna, that I didn't mention there. I appreciate the passion, but there are other things that are considered here, other groups of families that need to be considered. And again, this plan is an attempt to knit together the remarkable disparity around what people want and need in this moment of crisis. And I will also add that one of the things that weighs the most heavily on me is beginning with the end in mind. 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, this will be over. There will be a vaccination. And the question that I have is, where will this district be when that happens? Will we be separated? Will we be infighting? Or can we say that we walked through this together and tried to find a solution that made sense to everybody?
So Dana's going to go next, but I just wanted to let you know, Mary Beth, we have been advised by the MESC that the commissioner does not make the rules about sports, that the MIAA has said differently, and that they are the ones who are going to decide. Now, ultimately, who knows? But that is what the MASC has said today, that what you're saying is been widely communicated, but may be a misunderstanding. So, and as you know, the commissioner has said a lot of things, and it hasn't gotten into writing. So go ahead, Dana.
May I just interrupt?
No, Dana gets her 5 minutes.
Well, it's something that she said.
Okay, hold it, write it down. You still have a minute left, but Dana gets her 5 minutes.
I wrote it down.
Okay. So in the interest, I'm not going to ask questions about things that have already been said. So even though I have a lot of thoughts about those things, but I'm actually going to ask a clarifying question, because my understanding, Mary Beth, and you can tell me whether I've misunderstood this, but my understanding was that the plan as presented was what we were going to be voting on was to accept this 3-part plan. And my understanding had been that if we were to vote on that plan, that we would then be moving based on criteria that we would be receiving from the health department and other criteria, which I know we don't have yet, but that there would be existing criteria at some point, and we would be moving between these plans based on criteria. So what I'm confused about, and I understand that the current proposal was written to say that we would start hypothetically in the hybrid portion of that plan. But what I'm confused about here is that if we vote on that plan, and sometime between now and September 14th, the health department gives us criteria that says we're actually in the criteria that meets their fully remote plan. So wouldn't we begin the year fully remote?
Mm-hmm. Yes, no, you're not confused at all.
Okay, so what I'm confused about then is if we began the year fully remote, we would, if it was based on that plan and we remain the year fully remote, we would still have the opportunity to toggle into the other things, correct?
Yeah, so and this is the piece. So one of the things—
there are still concerns about the plan. I'm just clarifying.
Yeah, no, I think you're bringing up a really important point. That this plan says, what does it look like as you toggle back and forth? Right now, conditions seem to suggest that a hybrid model makes sense, but that could change next week, right? And
that's
so when the kids come back that first day of school, it could change on September 7th. There's an outbreak, and all of a sudden on September 7th, we say, okay, instead of following the hybrid path, we're going to follow the remote path, right? So that is something that is dependent. Where we are depends on what we're seeing in the community.
But that wouldn't, I guess I heard you say if we started in fully remote, we would need to be remote for the year. And my understanding is that
let me clarify that piece. The question was, why can't, if we are remote, have all students doing the same thing in the remote piece? Because that model the only way to do that is to maintain that model throughout the year.
So I understand that. You're saying that if we were to eliminate, the state-sponsored plan and just put everybody in full remote.
Pull kids in and then say, I don't know, if there's an outbreak in September, November, really good. It's time to go into hybrid. Now, all those kids who need to stay at home for whatever reason, there's no more program for them.
No, there were a couple, I understand that, and that makes sense. I just wanted to clarify, I actually heard it on a couple of the community chats. I actually heard people saying that the school committee was going to be making the decision as to whether we go back remote, hybrid, or fully in person. And my understanding was actually what the school committee is really voting on is this bigger whole plan, and that I'm hoping that criteria for health and health criteria, I'm hoping is going to come from the Board of Health.
Absolutely. So one of the things that they have been working on is what are the metrics
Correct.
that
That's what I'm looking for.
that a remote option is appropriate, a hybrid option is appropriate, or if totally in-person piece it is appropriate. That's something that prior to the start of school should be ready. I know I've been talking with Michelle and we are working to get a joint meeting of the Board of Health and the committee so that they can speak to one another about what is that criteria, what would drive, which pathway would be followed. So yes, and talking about if something happens quickly, how are we going to make that decision? Who should be at the table to be able to pivot the pathways? So yes, before the start of school, we should have metrics that suggest which would be the appropriate pathway to follow. And that absolutely the boards of health and our medical experts need to be weighing in on those decisions.
And with that, if our metrics from the Board of Health required that we open, let's say we passed this plan or a similar toggling plan, and the Board of Health metrics indicated that we should go back to school fully remote due to uptick or whatever the situation was, would the ramifications then from the state for us beginning the school year fully remote be the same as you just described if we had actually had the plan in place for all three?
Yeah, I think, again, there's not been a lot of meat on those bones in terms of those particular things. I feel like it would be conjecture around that. So whether the state rule would hold, the DESE rule would hold that when you're remote, you can't be playing athletics. I don't know if that means that, if you go out for a period of a couple of weeks and then come back, do you just skip the games, or which would probably make sense medically anyways. And then what would be happening related to the monies that are coming from the federal government, that is not yet clear. People are following that at the, I'm sure in the papers around what's happening there. So I think that, from the federal perspective and the state level, there is this worry about getting kids back into school. So from a federal level, I think that would probably be a criteria, but if we had a plan that is designed to do that, and there's an outbreak, it would seem reasonable to me that wouldn't be a problem. But again, until we actually saw how the law was written, it would be hard to say for sure.
Okay. Thank you. I think I'm good. Although for my 2 cents, if I'm over, I'm over.
We've got 2 minutes.
Oh, for my 2 cents, I feel I want to make it clear. My kids played sports 3 seasons, 4 years, both kids. Sports are very important to me. But to me, we need not to spend our time talking about sports right now. That is, to me, that has to go on the back burner. Whatever it is, we need to talk about education and safety. And again, I'm not anti-sports. My kids were athletes. I went to a million Hamilton Wenham sporting events.
Great. Okay. Michelle, I'm going to start you with a fresh 5 minutes. Go.
I won't take that long. I talk fast. First, I just want to reiterate what Mary Beth said. this is a moment in time. It's a horrible moment in time, and there are no winners. There's lots of losers. There's lots of disparities. I'm not saying anything new, but I think as adults, and I mean the leaders, school committee, parents, it is our responsibility to do what's best for our children. And we all are. And we have to make sure that what is presented and what we vote on as parents and school committee, that we keep our kids' best interest in mind and protect them. And I just think that's really important moving forward. We're all dealing with so much stuff right now. It's horrible. But it's our responsibility to make sure that we put our best foot forward with whatever horrible hand that we are dealt with. And the horrible hand is different for every single person and every single level. So you just got to keep that in mind. And as a parent, granted, I'm on the other end, one left. And if I had young children and I wanted to keep them at home, I would be beside myself. But this is a small moment in your child's education. And it goes fast, but just hang on and just protect those children and make the best of a horrible, lousy situation. So that's my soapbox. But my question about remote, if the 10% or 20% parents do choose to go remote, they are allowed to come back if we are still in the hybrid moment at certain times of the year. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
It is correct. And again, and let's just say hypothetically, we have to go, and I don't know, let me back up. Is it every quarter?
I think it would be more frequently than that. Probably
Okay.
I'm saying between like 4 and 6 week windows.
Okay.
And all of this is being designed, and we may play it out and we may see it's not a big issue to bring people back, or it's more, so we think that 4 to 6 window makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
And again, wherever we can accommodate families and it's possible, we want to do that, right? So we're trying to put some parameters around it. But if we have the ability to accommodate in earlier times, we will. We just don't know exactly what it's all going to look like. So as a start, we would publish dates where people could move. And then if we can be more flexible than that, we certainly would be.
Okay. Another hypothetical question. What if we start September 14th and September 20th, health metrics tick up? Would those people that were remote be able to come back in after 5 days? Again, it's hypothetical. Is that a possibility?
It's the piece of it is that the programs would they'd be structured differently, right? So you would be moving out of one program and one structure into another program for, let's say, a month, and then if you're a family that needs to have their children at home, they can't come back, then when the rest of the kids go back, then you have to go back to the other program. So it's possible. I just don't think it's good for kids to be moving in and out of programs like that. That creates a real mishmash of experience and structure for those students. So it's possible, but it would not be something that we would recommend for kids.
Okay. And another question, remote, and I heard this yesterday because I asked the high school chat. The teachers, if we were full remote, the teachers would be in the classroom. Is that correct?
Well, it would, again, depend on the circumstances. So if there was a situation where things have really ticked up and there is orders around people need to be staying home, then no, obviously people are going to be at home. If it is right on the cusp and we need to bring people in for certain amounts of time, we may do that. So we would leave that open. So the remote question and where teachers would really be situation dependent. Safety is obviously going to come first, and it would depend on what the scenario is we're actually looking at.
Okay. And last question, I don't want to get into the weeds, but I guess I will. Supposing we're in hybrid and a teacher tests positive for COVID, who would fill that class, or would that whole class have to be online?
Yeah, so we've been looking at how we handle the whole substitute question. It's a big one. Some of the issues that are associated with that is that, one, a lot of our substitutes are retired teachers that most likely would not want to be coming into the buildings. Substitutes often move from district to district, and will substitute in one district one day, another district another day. We don't want to have people in and out of buildings that have been around in lots of different districts. We're trying to keep cohorts as tight as possible. So what we've been looking at is trying to redirect some of our money from the substitute line item to see if we can bring in what we would call in-house subs in training, looking at some pod models at the elementary that might be helpful around that. So to be able to cover that instruction internally without having to do bring in substitutes. And may there be a piece of that when that occurs that could be more remote. That's something that until we can figure out exactly what the staffing would look like, how pervasive that might be, it's hard for us to say.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so I'll start my 5 minutes. So in a little bit, if you could just let people know who the vendors are that the state has put out. I'm not 100% sure that that's on the DESE website, but I know it's on Twitter, so it's like it's out there. So if you could talk about that, because I think once people see, it's sort of like you're buying into like stuff that the teachers use in their classrooms anyway, like LearnZillion or something like that. One of the things that I haven't really heard talked about is, which was brought up in the high school chat last night, is about how exactly that's going to work. Because if you divide the students alphabetically, it might not divide up really pretty for the number of kids that are in AP Econ. And those kids alphabetically might not be the same kids that are in honors English. And then the other thing I heard is that we will not really have separate honors classes, that honors and CP classes will be together. And so I guess that's my first question.
All right, I'm going to move Eric up from the participants over to the panelists so that he can respond to that. And here he is. Hi, Eric.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. The first question is about dividing equally. We deal with that all the time when we're scheduling because none of our classes ever perfectly fall with exact alpha numbers. So yes, it would be somewhat of an unequal division. It's also, we have to balance it with our kids who need extra supports. We'd have to balance it with against the middle school split as well, because we bus students on the same buses, or we have the similar starting time. So it will definitely not be right down the middle perfect, because some classes are larger, some classes are smaller. So there'll be some variations, and that's not something that can be avoided. One of the ideas that came up in the teacher design teams last week was combining some of our CP and honors classes. We do that now for some of our courses where they may be too small to run a separate CP and a separate honors class. So we looked at it for more of a staffing reorg so that we could service our kids who are remote with our staff members from the high school. So basically our remote kids could piggyback on top of a hybrid model, and the piece of use Google Classroom as an example. They go into their math class, get the Google Classroom work. They would have access, just like hybrid kids, to teachers in their office hours, but we'd also put in a second layer by combining the honors and CP classes. This frees up some of our kids. Sorry, that's my dog. So this frees up some of our teachers for a block throughout the schedule, and gives us the opportunity to have them supporting kids who are fully remote or kids who are on their 3-day remote of hybrid. We really tried to make the best use of our staff to meet the needs of all of our kids as they were either in or out of school. Given this, I only have really 45 teachers in the building, that model seems to allow us to get to our kids both in hybrid and in remote.
The answer to that is yes, CP and honors classes will be in the same room at the same time.
Not all.
Not all.
That's
Okay.
one thing I want to clarify. So let me give you an example. Physics, honors, and physics CP are very different curricula in their presentation style and in what they cover. So that's an example of something that wouldn't be, but yes, the ones that we feel that we can, we already do it in courses like languages and in some of our social studies electives.
Yeah. So what happens with, like, last year we didn't have AP US history because there was only 14 kids signed up. So now when you split them in half, there's only 7. So how does that work? Like, are we, by going with this model, are we limiting choices because of the numbers?
We're able to run the schedule we would run if we were in school.
Great.
So not every course will run, just like every year. It depends on what kids selected. Last year we didn't have enough kids to run an AP US history. This year I think we do. I think we're at 14. And again, the courses that will run, if we started school tomorrow in person, we're running the courses that we would run in person.
Sorry, Beth, do you want to talk about what the learning management, whatever options are?
No. So yesterday, late morning, we got an email with information around the learning management systems that would be available to the district. We've had an opportunity to spend a few minutes clicking through and taking a look at that. But what the plan would be is to have some educators go through the programs that are being offered, to take a look at them, see which would be the best fit for our district, look at places where things might be out of alignment, or there's some ways that we could supplement that if needed. So we're doing a deep dive on that. So we do not know yet, in terms of what has been made available to the state, what would be the best decision for our district. And we think the best way to do that is to start with educators vetting it. And then what we also can do is send it out to parents as well, but we'd like to be able to put a framework around what it would look like. So that's going to be something that's coming. I'd be happy to send out the links or the document that came from the state. There's a ton of information on that, and it's easy to get confused about what we would actually be using, which is why I'm hesitating to just forward it out. So what I would ask is that people can hang in there for probably about another week while we pull this together, and then we can give people information about what that would look like. I want to remind people again that one of the things that has happened this year is that our start date for students is significantly later. We are looking at a September 14th date. We are not going to be asking families to make a decision about what it is they want to do until this information is all out there. We have time to be able to get that information out there and then ask people what they want to do. So instead of just kind of buckshot scattering with information, let us take a look at it. Let's get it cohesive. Let's get it out to families so that they have information around what could make the best sense for them.
Just a second, I have to start my timer because my thing went off. So one of the things I did notice on that sheet when it talks about them is they all say that these have to be managed by a teacher. Mm-hmm. So how many teachers are we going to have managing the K-8 remote program?
So what we would be looking at there currently, and again, part of all this, that I don't know if people remember the chicken and the egg scenario that I keep talking about, is that we don't know definitively what we will have until we know where students are going to land. And it really needs to even get down to the level of how many second graders at Winthrop, how many first graders at Bucher, how many of the kids in this grade level would be doing it all remote. So I'm going to say that as a disclaimer, this could change, but what we feel like we can commit to at this moment is an educator at the elementary level that would be supporting students, and an educator at the middle level that would be supporting students. and then assigning one of our building administrators as part of their duties to also be the administrator of that program. These are programs that are self-paced, that are meant to be done independently, but we would have a teacher available to students at all times that are in this program. And again, part of what people probably want to know is, what would that look like? Well, we need to hire those folks, understand the systems, look at what those folks can be doing that's helpful, talking to parents about what it is that they might need. And one of the things that we do know is that part of their role would certainly be, how do we keep the students in the virtual academy integrated with the students that are in the brick and mortar program? That's something that's a need, and we care deeply about that. So that would be one portion of their job, but they would also be available for students throughout the course of the week. Currently, in a program that would be designed to be self-sustained for the most part, we would have probably, I'm guessing we'll probably be around 100 or so, 110 probably, maybe a little bit more. And so that would be 2 educators, so having about 50, 60 folks in their caseload.
Will families that are full remote be provided with a device?
Yes, any family in the district that wants or needs a device is we will provide them that device. At our middle level, all of our kids will be in a one-to-one environment. 6th grade will have Google Chromebooks. 7th and 8th grade will have iPads. Middle school, high school is already one-to-one. And then at the elementary level, we will have devices to be loaned out for any family that needs them.
All right, so clarification on what we're voting on. I thought that the plan that's submitted to the DESE is what we're voting on, and I thought that plan included how we were going to start.
Yeah, what it would do, and we could even take that language out, how we start, even if we said right now, the intent would be to start hybrid, that could change in 2 weeks, right? So that's not really the critical component of the plan, right? The plan is saying, how will you move your students between all these modalities of learning? And then one of the things that will be continued to build out is, how will we determine what is the appropriate modality? Given the current information in conversations with the Board of Health to date and with our nurses, there seems to be a agreement that a hybrid piece is a safe thing to do in this community. And so we are, but in talking as we work together, we've all agreed that we need some metrics for that. So those metrics are still unfolding. I think, as you and I have spoken, I think it's really important to get the Board of Health together with the school committee to be able to talk about what is it that would signal that it is not safe to bring kids back, half the students back in a 6-foot social distancing method, and what would be. So the plan, if you look at it, is not to say, this isn't so much a plan about what mode you will enter into in the fall. It's a plan to say, have you thought through how you will handle each of these scenarios? And will you be prepared to implement them should they become necessary?
And then I've brought this up before, but Hamilton Wenham is blessed to have a large number of students who join us from other communities through the Choice Program. Mm-hmm. So it's not just what is Hamilton Wenham's health metrics, but what's really the regional metrics. And then that also goes for our staff, like you yourself. You come from out of state. There are other people who live in New Hampshire. There's hopefully nobody's commuting from Rhode Island, because that's a bit of a haul. But Are we testing people? Are people going to be required to be tested? What's the thinking on that?
Yeah, so a couple things, those would be all the types of things that when we talk about metrics that I feel reasonably comfortable that the Board of Health is thinking about, right? And they are exploring what could we use. We think a little bit about what's the danger in terms of forest fires, right? That gauge that's the green to the red, thinking about what are the metrics that say, are we in the green, totally good to go, yellow, like where are we? And that group is working on that. So that's one thing. The question of testing has come up a lot. And at this point, this is something that is being worked on at the state level around, will we, what protocols in terms of testing in schools might be put into place, might be happening. So that falls under the category of answers will evolve. I can tell you that people are looking into that and seeing what might be possible.
Yeah, bi-weekly testing is the standard for the universities right now. So the fact that we have zero testing, zero temperature checking, zero seems to be a little bit concerning. So this is my last thing. I am not advocating for us to meet with the Board of Health. I am advocating for us to take a tour of the building to understand what this will look like with the Board of Health. So I don't know if a meeting is enough, because I think part of the issue that the committee is having is visualizing what this feels like and what if people will actually feel comfortable walking in the building. And I think, myself personally, like the first time I went to Kohl's, like I felt comfortable the first time. I didn't feel comfortable the second time because but it was a big hurdle to walk into the mall the first time. So I think it would behoove us to have people walk through the halls and to feel what we're putting the students into so that we understand it, because right now it's only hypothetical or it's imaginary. That's what I'm advocating for. So I've seen folks. Go ahead. And then I'm going to say, you can speak, but then Dana and Michelle have both raised their hands and they had kind of like 2 minutes left. So we'll let them talk and then we can talk about if we need to talk some more.
Okay, so yeah, that's absolutely something that we can do. In fact, one of the things that we're doing a lot of thinking about, particularly at the primary level, the K-2, what could that look like? And it will not look like just desks and rows. We have some thoughts about what that could be. So being able to give people visuals is certainly something that we can do. Many of the desks were actually delivered to the high school. They're sitting in the cafeteria. So if we have another, again, week or two to start to do some of those things, we have been completely and utterly focused on getting a plan together that responds to what we have been asked to do. So now that the plan document is in a place, and we may need to be making some adjustments to that. But once we get through that piece, we've got the staffing piece that is super time sensitive, and we will look to see if there's a way that we can kind of divide and conquer and get some classroom models set up so that both the committee and the Board of Health can walk through and get a sense of what a classroom setup would look like. Oh, Michelle, you're muted.
Which is good because my phone just rang and my phone comes in through my computer and I was like, I can't talk to my friends now. So Dana and Michelle have raised their hands. See, that's what happens.
All right.
Dana and Michelle both had raised their hands, and they have some time left, and other people have time left too. So we're gonna have Dana, then we're gonna have Michelle, and then we're gonna like take the temperature and see where people are. I see Peter's hand too. So
thank you. So Mary Beth, if hypothetically this board, and I am brand new, so I don't know exactly how this works, but if hypothetically we were to say that, and we haven't read it, but if we were to say that this plan in general appears okay, but we would like to task you with the idea that what you need to do is create a full remote model that doesn't rely on the state. If we were to task the district with that, how many more staff members would you require, or how much cost would that be? Have you run those numbers? Like how many people do you actually need, and what cost would that?
So here's what I would say is that if you're looking at K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's 6 teachers.
Well,
But I think you're probably, and again, until we would know where everybody is, I can't give you exacts, but you're probably in the range of 10 to 15 teachers, because you need to cover all of those grade levels. And then you need people that know the content in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade in mathematics, in science, in English language arts, in foreign language. So you're probably in the millions or more than a million. The other question is, quite frankly, operationally. At this point, trying to bring in large numbers of teachers to recruit, to post, to hire, to train is also probably operationally not viable. To give you a sense, that's my best guess as to what we would probably be looking at financially. Just raising the operational question of, even if we could use the funding and figure out the funding, where, would we actually even then be able to find people to fill those roles? So an example would be a math teacher, which oftentimes is very, very difficult to find. At this late date, could we even find somebody that would have that skill set to bring in and do the remote program? So those are some of the things that we thought through, and what could that look like? But those are the challenges that are associated with it.
Okay, and I guess just to piggyback on that, at the elementary level, was there creative thinking engaged in? I'm sure that there was, I'm sure, but around the idea of kind of combining potentially grades, like a one room schoolhouse idea, or that kind of idea, so that elementary teachers who are certified in different grade levels. I'm just trying to look at
I think, we've played with a lot of things. One of the things that, we wanted to be sure that we could get a teacher that we could move to be targeted to students that were fully remote. So we think we can play around with some numbers around that. There is a level at which, and I'm going to go back to this chicken and the egg thing that I keep saying, right, is that what people finally decide in terms of grade level, and we now know these are how many classes we have, and what we need to staff and how many kids we have in them. But we have schools that, for the most part at the elementary level, run 2 classrooms per grade level. It is unlikely that we're going to get to a point where we would have one teacher in an elementary school that could cover all the kids that were going to be in a hybrid model. But they're looking like, between 35 and 40, we'll see where they fluctuate, but you can't have one teacher assigned to just that group of kids. So that's where the challenge lies, is that there's just not enough teachers to both have them teaching in person and to do otherwise. I'll share with you, one of the things we explored was, what if we consolidated grade levels by elementary schools and just did like a K1 and a 2-3 and a 4-5? Could we be more impactful there? There was a lot of dialogue around that, and there was a lot of concern about, in this moment of crisis and people wanting to be connected to their schools and disrupting that whole piece, and having students and siblings in 3 different buildings, what was that going to do in terms of safety pieces and that kind of thing? So we unpacked a lot. We really did try to figure out, was there a way to do that? But at this moment, we cannot see how to do that. What I would certainly say is that we understand this is a need and the wish for families to have all students taught by Hamilton Wenham teachers. We will continue to monitor that and see where the numbers fall when we have actual firm numbers. Does that provide any additional
I
opportunity?
want to speak to the numbers because I feel strongly that the stronger the clear metrics that we have, that the community has access to, if our Board of Health provides really clear and really measures that feel really safe to people, I actually think you might have more people who are able to enter into the district plan if people feel that they are truly safe based on really clear metrics. Where we don't have those metrics right now, I think it's really difficult for people to make a decision about whether or not they feel like, in other words, if we started because the metrics were clear that we couldn't start, we had to start remotely, people might join in a toggling plan if they felt that the metrics from the Board of Health were only going to allow us to move into a hybrid or a fully in-person plan at a truly safe moment. But because we don't have any metrics in front of us right now, I think it's really challenging for people to make informed decision.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that we've been sitting with is one, we have not asked anybody to make any decisions because we know that our communities and our families don't have enough information yet to make those informed decisions. And that comes under the category of answers will evolve. As we're able to provide that more detailed information, we have a number of weeks yet left to go around that. And we'll be working hard to get people the answers that they need. We're working really hard on FAQ documents. We've captured a lot of the questions that people have through the chats. So I would completely agree, Dana, that people do not have enough information right now to make informed decisions for their families. And that one of the critical pieces is that metrics from the Board of Health. And I think people will also be reassured when they look at some of the nursing protocols and what happens in terms of students that may be ill or all those different types of things. Those documents are being built out now. They look really good. We're just trying to make sure that we have them at a level that is appropriate to send out publicly.
And Michelle, is my time up?
Is it a quick question?
Well, I just want to know, I just want to put out that if we were able to provide that information and we did it well, we may have fewer families who say there's no way I'm going to be able to come back. And that might allow us to provide those fewer families with the guarantee that they could have Hamilton Wenham teachers teaching them. But I guess it's a chicken and egg thing. What you're saying is because we don't know, I guess what I'm saying is that if we had clearer metrics, people could make better informed decisions. And it is possible that because we had those really clear metrics, we would have a much smaller number of people saying, I'm not going to be able to go back at all and need to be fully remote.
Right. The thing, Dana, that you have to be aware of around that is it actually almost becomes more problematic the smaller that number gets, right? Because you have smaller numbers of people that are spread out against each grade level. It's not, we have a chunk of students that need a second grade teacher. You may have 3 students in 3rd grade and 4 students in 5th grade and, 8 students in 7th grade. And so it's not the same teacher. If what people are looking for is I want a Hamilton Wenham 1st grade teacher, how many of those students that are and I would say most of the families that I've corresponded with, it's not even a choice. They really need this option as a family. That what are, when you spread all those numbers out, you need multiple teachers at multiple grade levels and multiple content areas. That's the dilemma that we're trying to solve. And again, what I am saying to the board, no, believe me, I would like nothing more than to be able to support the families and the way in which they want to be served. I understand and appreciate the concern that they have. And we're going to, as things evolve, right? Maybe there is a way. Right now, we can't see it. And I want to be honest about what I think we can actually do as a district. But what I can assure you, the committee and the community, is that we are not going to sit there and say, so this is it. And we're not going to look for opportunities where we may be able to connect students that need that fully remote program in a way that that they would like to see, and we would like to give them.
Okay, Michelle Horrigan.
Yep. So we know you've talked about this. Safety is paramount, but teachers are on the front line. Our Hamilton Wenham Educators Association did sign on to the AFT this week, and I'm sure the MTA's resolution is being kicked around. I'm sorry, that's not the right word, is being considered for our educators. How do, again, crystal ball, we don't know, but how will we move forward if our teachers say, I can't teach this year, it's unsafe, I'm not comfortable, I need a leave of absence?
Yeah, so we anticipate that we will have some teachers that will feel that and need that kind of flexibility. So we are in the process of both outlining who we are able to bring in to give HR support to those teachers and give them good guidance about what their options are, and then looking at how we would handle that, again, depending on where those individuals are, what are the staffing challenges that would come up, in a situation in which, there's a statewide stance from the MTA and all its members that say we're not coming in, then time to pivot, right? And so this, much like so much of what it is that we are dealing with, is fluid. I can assure you, I think I'm being honest and offering information that I think is fair and accurate, is that we're working right now as partners to say, what are your worries? What are your concerns? Much like the community has questions about what are the metrics, our teachers have questions about what are the metrics. What would happen if? So we are working really hard to try to figure those pieces out with the teachers as partners. We acknowledge and listen and understand that many people are anxious about coming back, and how do we talk to one another about that and see what we can figure out. And we know that there are many families and children that want and need to be back to school. This is the puzzle, right? All good people, all needs and interests that are valid, that need to be considered as we continue to try to knit together something that makes sense and honors all the perspectives and needs in our district, teachers included.
As a follow-up, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but have you reached out to the teachers directly, or are you working straight through the union? And
so yes, I can share with you what the outreach. I started at the end of July with an initial conversation with teachers. We had our teacher design team, which was comprised primarily of teachers. Once we had the kind of skeleton of the plan, we had bi-level targeted chats, much like we did the targeted community chats. We held targeted faculty charts to hear what concerns are and that kind of thing. One of the things that we're hearing is, and it's exactly what we're hearing here, what are the details, right? I think, Michelle, we need to know what this is so we know whether or not we feel safe and okay. So we're working really hard to get those things together, but there not only have there been conversations with the union representation, we are also constantly reaching out to our full faculty and staff to let them know what's transpiring, to listen to what their questions are, and to try to respond to them.
unless you're working from home, any environment you go into is a scary, risky place. And this is the life that we're living now. Teachers though especially, with their audience are at higher risk. So I'm happy to hear that you are reaching out to them, and they, as I've always said, they are key to our success.
Absolutely. And when I talked earlier about, this will end and where do we want to be, right? We want our educators to feel that we care about them, that they are important, that we're taking good care of them. And so that is a key piece of this puzzle, right? There's lots of pieces of the puzzle, but that's certainly a piece that we're attentive to and are trying to work together to see what we can do to have an environment that we can have students come back to school who really, really need to be back in school, and at the same time have teachers feel safe when that's happening.
Okay, so both Peter and Anna have asked to speak more. So I kind of want to address, I don't want to not let them speak, but I just want to kind of address and maybe talk about how much time we want to spend here today. Also, whether or not we would like Mary Beth to ask for an extension so that we could vote either Wednesday, Thursday, or something next week. And
Michelle, if I could just clarify, there was a communication that came out this afternoon that the commissioner has just by default granted an extension to the 14th. And if you need something beyond that. So again, we do have that flexibility. That probably came out a half an hour after we spoke.
Yeah, no, I didn't understand. I knew that there was, but I didn't understand it was everybody. So it's like, this is due on Friday, and then like, take the weekend, that's nice.
Michelle, can I ask a clarifying question about the vote itself? Dana brought up a good point that, there's a vote on the plan, and I still have more questions about the plan and why we're where we are, but I will defer those for a moment, and whether or not we're going the right direction. But aside from the overall plan, it is my impression that school committees within their power can direct the district what mode we start in. All for the last several weeks, districts have been saying, because if everyone's providing a 3-part plan, you're getting votes out of school committees saying, we approve the plan and we're starting remote. We approve the plan and we're starting hybrid. So I understand that we're waiting for metrics and Board of Health, but it's my understanding that actually is the purview of the school committee. And I also think that the metrics of Board of Health are not the only thing informing that vote. For me personally, I care a lot about the Board of Health metrics, but not only as they apply to the school community. I think I've actually heard from a lot of non-school people talking about community spread as our children go into Crosby's and Cumbies and CVS. Like, we are a whole community. And I think sometimes we forget that Hamilton and Wenham is 25% seniors, which is already an at-risk population. And so everything the school does actually does affect the entire community. And so Board of Health is one part, but for me, a huge part of it is the environment itself that DESE is requiring. And Mary Beth, I want you to hear this really powerfully. When I say inhumane, I'm not talking you. I think the system, I think DESE, I think the situation is asking something that's inhumane. I'm not blaming you at all. It's an inhumane situation. And I've said to so many people, the problem we have is that depending on remote motivation and what's most important, you're weighing loss of life, loss of job, loss of emotional health, loss of income, which then leads to loss of housing. I mean, none of these are fair things. I keep coming back to the fact that the one thing that is irrefutable is once you're dead, you're dead. Everything else is mitigable, but we can't recover from that. So part of me is struggling with what are we voting on? Because to me, if we start in that remote place, we buy time to flesh out the metrics, to flesh out maybe some new ideas about the hybrid model. I mean, I still think there's more spaghetti that can be thrown on the wall. Just as we've been talking and Dana was talking about the cohorts, I had an idea about something to flesh out. So I guess I kind of feel like, what's the harm in starting conservatively, which is safer? We buy time to sort out more hybrid learning platform. Peter's point, like, I don't see what the rush is when everything the rush does creates more risk. I need to understand, what are we voting on? Because I could theoretically support the plan overall, but I have a very strong opinion that I've made quite crystal clear that I do not support starting in hybrid. And if I'm voting yes, if yes means voting hybrid, then my vote is a no, because I think we should start remote.
Yeah, so we need to get clarity around that because like MASC was clear today that the school committee approves the plan. Of course, they say a lot of things that then the DSE may or may not agree with, so we have to figure that out. So I want to go back to something Dana said, which is if we were to charge you to do something with the remote, what would we do? And I think, do we want to have Vinny talk today, or are we going to have Vinny talk on Monday?
I think it makes sense to probably, because I can tell you, I have a hard stop at 5:30, and I think there's probably some things to work out. But in terms of looking at where we are financially, it would be important to know that most of what we look like we have for a surplus, we already have. We see places where that will probably likely to be used. But that, Vinny, are you available Monday, or is it just for today?
I think Monday should be fine, as far as I know.
Monday at 3.
I will still be working, so it has to be fine.
That's
still hours.
Okay, so, all right. So Monday at 3, we'll have you speak about surplus. But generically, so Mary Beth, if that is true that surplus is mostly allocated, that's going to require fund transfers, and I think it would be good to have that fleshed out a little bit. Even though we wouldn't be necessarily making the fund transfers now, we might just want to have an idea of what those look like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Vinny's prepared to speak to that.
Okay. Well, no. That's not what I'm saying. He needs fund transfers
For FY20.
Yeah, right.
I'm
Sorry.
saying if the surplus from whatever, if it's going to require fund transfers in FY21, we should have some sort of semblance of what that is, because they are supposed to be approved before they're,
You're definitely going to need transfers for FY21 as well.
Yeah.
For both.
Already.
Yes.
Okay. Get right into it then. All right. So, how many people can meet on Wednesday next week? So it would look like Monday at 3, we would maybe flesh out this a little bit more and then actually vote on a plan later in the week. Or do people feel like, hey, Monday after I get a little bit more information, I'm going to be ready to vote? So
could I say that I would like to pull that in on Wednesday, but with the hope that we can go into Monday saying it's possible we'll resolve this on Monday and then have it penciled in. Can we do that?
Yeah, and it kind of, we have to pencil it in that way just because of the open posting and all of that.
Yeah, no, I'd like to pencil it in, but I'm going to go into Monday with the hopes that we can be having a productive conversation that's moving toward potentially a vote if we can do it.
Mary Beth, will we have the environmental stuff by Monday?
Yes, I believe that we will. That we've gotten the draft of the report, and so we should have that information from Tom on Monday. Yes.
Anna, how do you feel? Do you think you want to have a meeting on Wednesday?
Well, I mean, I think we need to resolve the question of what are exactly voting yes or no to. That's a huge one. I think just for the community's perspective, Mary Beth, and I don't know, since it's all still in development, but I think that at this point, further delay about the details is one of the things causing community agitation. People are trying to figure out their work, their cohorts, their childcare. But I also think the sooner we can release, and I know that the document is out there publicly, like Michelle said, it's on Twitter, I've seen it. I think the fact that you're asking people to make even a rough statement of like, what am I going to do? And then you're saying, I can't figure out the staffing until I know what they're going to do. Literally, people cannot make a decision about what they want to do without seeing those remote models. And I think actually a lot of people that I've heard from and talked to are trying to decide if they do anything with the district, the remote model, or truly homeschool, like out. And so the more we push that off, I think we're actually just creating more opportunity for community dissent. So when can we expect to give our potential remote audience true information about how we're going to manage that system? Because I think that's a crucial piece of our puzzle. And right now they don't even know what the names of the platforms are.
Yeah, that information again was released yesterday. So what I would envision is that we can probably get some information out to families next week. One of the things that I've been trying to be really attentive to is to not put information out and then say, oh, that's changed, right? There's so much that is occurring that if you rush to put it out and then have to say, oh, sorry, no, that's not right. And so we're trying to get answers that will hold for people. But I absolutely understand what you're saying, Anna, that is a need for families. So we can get something out next week. You know, we'd like to be able to put some, not just have it be a document, but here's what it would look like in Hamilton Wenham. And I'd like the opportunity for folks to vet it, but we can certainly target for next week some communication going out to families.
I think that's huge. The other thing that I just want to remind you of that I've yet to hear you answer despite being asked repeatedly is my question about the ALA safety security protocols. Because one of the things that's come up is if we're going to have kids outside, how are we protecting them? And if that involves integration with local police or something else, I am not personally a fan of having cops on schools ever, but that hasn't been addressed. And I would like to have somebody answer that question about how we're keeping the kids physically safe with all the doors and windows open.
Yeah, so you can put that on Tom's list, or who's in charge of that?
Yeah, Tom will be working on that, and those are things, that level of detail and thinking are things that answers will evolve. You know, we do have students outside, you know, in regular school years, but in terms of any particular issues related to security, that will be another lens that we'll take a look at, Anna.
I would appreciate that.
I would encourage the community that's concerned about that to drive by Winthrop and try and find those tents. Because they're there. Good luck. David, do you think you could meet on Wednesday? Do you feel we need to meet on Wednesday? How are you feeling?
I was actually just about to email you guys, text you guys saying that I have to step out now.
Yeah.
I could go earlier again.
Like 3?
Yep.
Okay, Peter.
Are you calling on me to see my availability or allowing me to ask my question?
Well, first I'm going to ask your availability, and do you feel that it's necessary? Necessitated is the word I was trying to come up.
I mean, it could be. You can always cancel it, right?
Okay, are you available at 3?
Yes.
Okay.
And this is in addition to Monday, right? We're still going to have a meeting Monday.
Oh, we're having a meeting on Monday. Vinny's got big news.
And you're talking about the Wednesday, the 12th at 3 o'clock?
Yeah, is that okay?
Because we have a negotiations committee meeting at 4, so we would need
We're gonna have to
adjust that.
There's a whole bunch of stuff that day. Like Mary Beth is actually scheduled to be in negotiations and policy at the same time. So.
Well, we have to set the policy. We haven't actually officially nailed that down. Also, just as a reminder, I have to sign the warrants at some time around 3:30 on Wednesday. So unless we don't want the bills paid, that would be. But maybe if Dawn can have them done earlier, I'm available earlier if Dawn somehow or other able to do that.
You can even do it Thursday morning if you have to.
Oh, I could?
Okay,
problem solved.
If it's early enough.
Yeah, because the bank transfer goes through at like 10 or 11 or something like that.
I will be there whatever time you tell me on Thursday morning then. So that's fine.
Michelle Horrigan, 3, is that doable on Wednesday? Okay, so we're gonna pencil that in, Mary Beth.
Okay.
We're gonna see where we get. I'm just gonna say I'd love it if there was a tour and the Board of Health on Wednesday. And
I'll see what we can do. We've got, and I want to remind people, we are working really hard, and I want to get you what you need. We need to get the staffing thing figured out next week. I'm committing to getting some communication out to parents around the state options. So what I don't want to do is say sure, and then not be able to deliver.
No. I'm saying I'd like that. So we'll see what we can get.
So it's on the wish list, and if we can pull it off, we'll do it.
So in preparation for Monday then?
Wait.
Okay.
Will it help you if we contact the Board of Health? Like, would that be like something to check off for you?
So actually, I was speaking to Leah today, who's our head nurse, and she was going to reach out to them. I knew that we had a scheduled meeting, so just to check calendars, I said, why don't you see? Now that was probably a later day, the later time at 7, so I'd have to reach back out to her. I'll see her again tomorrow, so I can ask her if 3 o'clock would be something that would be viable for her.
Yeah, and
And the boards of health.
can Hugh Taylor come too?
We can see, you know, the bigger the group gets, the harder it is to get it all together. But I can ask Leah tomorrow. She's been great about trying to coordinate.
Yeah, even if we just have him talk for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, or he makes us a patient for 15 minutes, whatever it is they do at his practice. Okay.
So my question is, in preparation for Monday then, we all have to have time to read the plan, but are we actually asking Mary Beth in any sort of formal, organized way to say we want to see more emphasis on the remote option? Because I mean, what's the directive for her? Because right now we haven't pivoted on any level. When does that happen? And I know that Mary Beth, rightfully so, has said, you're running out of time. So, and I know there's there's the union deadline coming up with assignments. So I frankly will be very resentful of the process if we get to the point where someone says, it's Monday, it's Wednesday. Yeah, if we were going to make a pivot, we should have done it last week. Here's last week. Like, here we are. I am expressing my feelings about all of it. I think I've made that clear. I just want to know what we're tasking Mary Beth to do, because if this comes back around in the same form again and we haven't answered that question, I don't know where we are. And I don't want to set you up for failure, Mary Beth. I don't.
Dana?
I guess what I'm hearing, and people can say whether I'm hearing, I heard, just to Anna's question, I heard 2 areas of concern. One is concern about the safety of beginning in the hybrid model rather than remote. And the second concern that I heard was around having that separate state-sponsored remote model. Other concerns that I heard were sort of detail-oriented and kind of in the weeds, but those were the 2 30,000-foot concerns that I heard. I don't know whether other people agree, but that's what I wanted to put out there.
I would put the other one is, where do our teachers really feel? And I am very reticent to go against something that our union has publicly come out and said otherwise. I'll just throw that out there, because it's not just the MTA, the AFL, it's also the North of Boston Union letter our local union signed on to. And I repeat, without our teachers, we don't have a plan. So if they're not on board with it, we need to know that right now.
It does say when it's safe to go back. So I think that what Dana was saying is that we need to know if it's safe. And I think that's where that Board of Health information is going to help us. So I can put it to a consensus if people feel that we would like Mary Beth to do some more work on the remote situation.
Can I just get some clarification, because we've been working on it, because we know that this has been a concern. So I guess, are there parameters or things that you want to change in terms of what we can consider? Because under current staffing and resources, we are not seeing a way to do what you're asking us to do. So if you say we want to add 10 teaching positions to the budget, can you explore that and see what that would look like? But the plan you see in front of you is not for lack of hearing the concerns and not for lack of trying to come up with something different. And so I'm not sure I'm going to have a different answer for you under these current conditions by Monday, and I don't want to set up any false expectation around that.
Yeah, because you've gone through and you've evaluated a lot of different alternatives. I think you're probably best able to come back to us and say, it's going to take 6 more staff members, or it's going to take 4 more staff members. Like, like, I don't know what
for that. Yeah.
But in my mind, I can see a model that's 4, but I don't know how Hamilton Wenham operates and what those things are. So
I think that's the question, is what would you need in order to bring all of those full remote students into and be taught by Hamilton Wenham teachers? What would you need? I think that's the question we're asking.
I think that's a huge question. And I know that a lot of spaghetti.
And I understand that that's a hypothetical, but it helps
What
us.
would it take?
What would it?
I want to know what it's going to take. And I also just want to reiterate, there are lots of other, I mean, I think at this moment, that to me seems like the highest level concern I'm hearing from the community. If there is a way, honestly, if there is a way that you could actually solve that problem and I actually think I would like to revisit the idea of what's the maximum number of cohorts. You know, the 40 students could be 20 and 20. You could also divide it 3 groups of 15 and free up some head count. I'm just saying, like, I'm not entirely sure that and if it just takes more time, that's what I'm saying. Like, we're not.
Also, I'm Mary Beth, you know, you and I had a discussion about, like, how can we reach out to other districts with other things? I think there is a district nearby that if we were able to create a cohort remotely, that would be acceptable to the community. And I don't know where they are.
Yeah, I would say at this
logistics
point,
legally of that is for sharing student information and all that.
yeah, no, you know, down the road, you know, is that something that we could look at? Right now, I think that kind of partnership is, you know, something that's valuable. We have no capacity or time to try to craft something like that together.
It's too bad.
You know, and I appreciate the thinking around that and the creativity around that. And I think there may be other times when things are less chaotic that we could look at potential partnerships. But at this moment, you know, it's Thursday. You know, we have meetings set up tomorrow with all folks trying to get these FAQ docs together, which I hear is a need, to try to figure out a system by which we can vet the things that came out to yesterday around the state systems, get all that information to you by Monday with this plan. That gives us we have one working day, and all of the teachers that helped us create this and think about what's possible and not possible are not in on Monday. So we will have principals looking at this in terms of what would the numbers take. That's what we can deliver on Monday, is what would it actually take in terms of bodies. There was extensive work. Believe me, I have listened to the community. I've gotten the same emails you have. I understand it's a concern. I appreciate their concern. And we have been trying diligently to come up with a solution. What you're saying to me now is we can think beyond what we have in terms of resources, and you want to know what the options are if those resources are expanded, I can come back to you with that, right? And it will be both a financial piece and then a note about operationally what's probably possible. But I can get you that information so that you have that on the table to consider.
Yeah, because I feel like you probably have already calculated that out. You've probably already
there's a level at which I can do that. You know, I can get a pretty good number for you. Again, final numbers will depend on who gets, registers in which classes and that type of thing. If we end up with some numbers that are really off in a couple of grade levels, could we combine numbers together? Those are the things that become possible once you know what your actual enrollment is. But we can make assumptions around that. So that I can give you a number based on, and I can even give you probably a low end and a high end about this is what you could be looking at.
I think that would be helpful because I'm just.
Peter has his hand up.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have a question for the whole committee. We all have, our email boxes are full of concerned parents about whether the state learning management system is equitable. Is it disconnected? Is it our curriculum? Which system is it? And I understand from this meeting, there's lots of challenges about moving students back and forth. There's questions about staffing issues. And I've brought this up now that Dr. William Hoover, who is an expert on learning management system. He's an expert consultant. He consults nationally and globally, has generously offered his time to help us understand what an effective, intuitive, adaptable, interactive, publisher qualified content looks like, how fast we could implement it, what staffing would look like, how much it would cost. It would be, if we are increasingly looking like we're going to vote remote, a learning management system is even more important. And teachers will need to know about learning management systems so we can evaluate it. I could get him on the call now and he could answer the questions, or maybe we could schedule it for Monday. But I honestly believe it's extremely important to hear from an expert on learning management systems, because parents are concerned, teachers are concerned. It's come up throughout this whole meeting that we need to hear from someone like him. Is it possible we can hear from him? Whether it's implemented in the next 5 weeks or over the fall. Would the committee like to hear from him?
I'll call him and then I'll see if we can schedule him. So here's the thing. We've got like 9 minutes. Okay, we've got 9 minutes. I would like to be able to go into executive session to share with you the potential MOU, beginning the first draft of a potential MOU, because everything's changing from the union.
Michelle, could I ask?
That later, like on Monday, and we can continue talking here. I also think there was something else on the agenda that we wanted to talk about. Mary Beth?
Just one thing, and I wanted to respond, and Peter, I'm so appreciative of the investment that you have in our technology and our learning management systems, but I would strongly share with the committee that if and when it comes to time to change the learning management system, that our teachers and our educators are the people that are vetting that. I think that trying to do that at a school committee meeting without having any educators looking at that is really, really problematic. And that it is throwing a piece into the puzzle. That is one piece that we're pretty clear on. We're going to use Google Classrooms. And given the tremendous amount of demand on the time of the committee, I really believe that is something that should be sorted out by educators and administrators. As much as I appreciate the efforts.
But the community wants it's the community asking, right? We all have the same emails. The parents are concerned about their students going on the state system.
I hear what you're saying, Peter, but you know, we've kept the little log of all the emails that we've gotten, and we've gotten like less than 20 emails.
It's still a lot.
Can I suggest that there's a lot of right?
So it's not that many students. So and trust me, if you guys want to flood our email boxes, knock yourselves out, because that gives us more information.
Well, can I offer this, Peter? I think what you're talking about is something we do need to cook on, but right now we're in a pressure cooker, and I think we have such limited time for everything. I actually think we have some long-range strategic thinking to do, but to me, this is all just much more of an indication that what we need is safe time to plan better and think through these things. We're not going to get there this next week. Like, we need to come up with a reopening that we can actually get behind in some way or another, so that Mary Beth can staff it and we can pay for it. Like, that's practical. I do think very soon, and this is part of the reason why I think we should phase it in. We have lots of unanswered questions and no particular rush at this next week to solve every one of them. So Peter, I would support you 100%, but I do agree with Mary Beth that I don't think that next Monday is the time for that. I think we have to get everything going towards a vote and a plan that Mary Beth can, so that we can live with and implement. And I think we need to buy ourselves time. And I think that it's cooking. It's like a burner, but we're in the pressure cooker right now. I don't think we're ready to take something else off the burner, if that makes sense.
So here we go. Now we're down to 6 minutes. How many people would like to see the proposed MOU today? All right, so it looks like that's what we're going to do. So because I'm the chair, I have to make the motion to go into executive session, because I have to declare that it's whatever to our disadvantage. So let me get the wording up here. So I'm
Vinny,
gonna,
is there a separate link for this? I don't think I saw an executive session link come through.
there is, maybe what we can do is,
I can send one out to the committee after we close this one out. I will send the link for the executive session. Does that work?
yeah, and it's gonna be
Okay.
down and dirty.
Well, you're doing that work. I'm gonna leave. Oh, no, I can't leave.
Can't leave.
You're the
Yeah.
host.
Can't leave. So,
Right.
I move that we vote to go into executive session for purpose number 3 to discuss strategy with respect to the collective bargaining with the Hamilton Wenham Education Association. So having an open session would be to the detriment of the bargaining position of the committee. Do we have a second?
Second,
Great. Second by Michelle, or by Dana. Michelle Horgan,
Yes.
Anna,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Dana,
yes.
Michelle Bailey, yes. We'll move into executive session. We will not return to open session. So everybody who's watching, this is the end of the show. We'll see you on Monday for our continuing saga.